Welcome to the Walter Bosley channel, where my guest is our good friend Hans Dietrich. Welcome.
Thank you, Walter. Thanks for having me back on. Always a pleasure to have these wonderful roundtables with you on some really
Yeah,
interesting topics.
jumping in on stuff, and I think th- this one, um, is going to be one of the most interesting. It's something that's interested me, and I wanted to get your input and take on this stuff. It has to do, of course, with one of my favorite subjects, the Vedic cosmography, and I'll be referring to this book. This
Oh
this is a
wow.
really interesting book. This is Richard Thompson's book, and really, really cool stuff in here. You can see I got my tabs going already and such. But the topic is what in Hinduism are referred to as Lokas. There's also Mandala, which is another term for different dimensions, but essentially the idea that there are material realities coexisting in the same space, but at different dimensions, being in, different different spectrums of reality, different dimension of that same space, so that there's no collision, and apparently no not much, if any, interaction, right? So that's the topic that really fascinates me tonight. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Lokas, interesting. So these are the different dimensions, as you had mentioned, of the Vedic cosmologies, kind of akin to what Marvel's been playing around with the quantum verse.
Sure.
So multiple dimensions. Each one has different beings or spirit beings that live within them. They don't interact. I believe there's 14 Lokas.
Mhm.
So there's seven higher dimensional and seven lower dimensional, all the way into the pits of hell, basically.
Yeah.
Um, in Buddhist philosophy, they can be accessed. This has a lot to do with what we talked about before with Mount Meru. These are the seven dimensional chakras moving upward. And then obviously there are other demonic chakras or points that move downward in internally in a sense. But
Mhm.
through a technique and a spiritual technology of astral projection, ascended Tolku masters have the ability to traverse these different dimensional planes. And I think this is what a lot of in my research has been talked about, dealing with ascended masters and ascension and basically astral projecting through these different realms. Um,
Yeah.
I find it fascinating because right in the middle of it is our earthly realm, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then above that is the realm of time and space between the earth and the sun. And then it just keeps building all the way up to the levels of Brahma, where the ascetics in that level of the dimension don't come back or reincarnate because they're already ascended in a sense. But
Mhm.
everything leading up to that is a different phase of reaching ascension, I guess is a good way of putting it. And then
Right,
going in
right.
the other direction, you're heading into the depths of Maya, the deceiver, right? Maya has many meanings. It means love, it means reflection, but it also means it's Maya is the
Illusion, right?
yeah, illusion basically, and he's the demon architect in a sense. And if you've ever seen the movie The Little Buddha, there's a scene
Uh-huh.
where Keanu Reeves playing Siddhartha confronts his own ego and his own reflection, Maya, who comes out of the waters. And he fights this battle internally in his mind with Maya to free Maya and show him his true self. Which, yeah, instead of the reflection of Siddhartha, he then shows himself as the demon that he truly is. And so it's it's
Yes, yes.
it's 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 interesting, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
What are your thoughts in all this? Where has this
Well,
taken?
I tend to approach the multidimensional idea concept in in a way you might expect, considering stuff I write and stuff I published and the things that I like. I'm a pulp adventure guy, so I think of, ooh, journeying to different dimensions. So I tend to focus on that idea when, reading stuff on cosmography and myth and folklore and stuff, which, as we know, have nuggets of truth in them. That's where that stuff comes from.
Definitely.
And I tend to focus on the how do you get there, in it. And in the Vedas, of course, they say that you can't reach higher levels or other levels, um, unless you resonate, with pure spirit or good and
Right.
all that. And that brings us back to the very common lesson between all religions and social behavior concepts, whatever, that, be a good person, really, be as good as you can be, and everything will be enriched and better. And I think that idea comes from, this idea of you're trying to resonate with these higher levels. But another part of me, I can't help it, product of the 20th, and, our lives are overlapping these 2 centuries with the technology and the
Right.
science fiction born out of them. Um, I'm one of those guys that thinks, yeah, all that resonate with your soul and everything is well and good, but I'm sure there's something with a little dial and a couple of switches that can expedite or simplify, the process, some type of there must be some type of technology, being a material electronic external technology, or a psychotronic, psychological tool.
Inception comes to mind.
Yeah, you know
So oftentimes you have to be initiated into these different vibrational points to gain access to them.
true,
But
true.
through technology, that's interesting that you bring that up, because if you look at like the first invention of the TV, the Crookes tube, right?
Mhm,
So they were projecting the cross into this, what they thought was another realm, to see if they could provoke a reaction.
mhm,
And you flash forward to, the 1980s, 1990s, when they start lighting up CERN or HARP. What are they trying to do? Well, they're also trying to crack the code of these different dimensions. It's not
yeah,
just looking for the Higgs boson. They're
right.
looking for something a little more in depth there. And so I've always thought that that was very interesting, because here we're trying to use a technology to crack through that veil.
Yeah, yeah, and, an interesting section of this Thompson book, talks about a particular, I forget his name, Swami, anyway, um, it's from the Thompson book. They were talking to a Swami, a guru, back in 69 or 70, I think it was 70,
Hmm.
and they got to talking about Apollo 11.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I had
Okay.
never yeah, the moon landing. I had never thought about it in terms like this, but it seemed to make a lot of sense when you look at, and I'll get to what I'm going around for dramatic, effect here. Um, if you remember that press conference that they did after the quarantine, after they were, after they were back and they'd spent their time in quarantine,
They all look
in
like somebody
which
had killed their dog.
yeah, yeah, in which they're all just kind of
Totally
morose.
emotionless. Yeah.
Yeah, emotionless, no energy. Now, you could say they were exhausted. I think that's what most people explain it as. But, what was weird was, out of that and some other comments that have been made in interviews, it seems like they have gaps. We hear stories of the astronauts, um, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. Um, they seem to have gaps
Of
in
memory. Yeah.
their memory, yeah, of going to the moon. So, there's that story that's out there. There's long been the debate of what did they really see up there, right? Did they
Right.
see ruins and relics? Did they encounter ships, out on the ridge of a rim of a crater, which that's a legend, some
Aldrin had
legend.
said that they were being watched the whole time.
Yeah, that well, according to that story, yeah, because we're not sure about the source of the so-called this was their other channel, and this is it's all this interesting stuff, but what can we verify of any of this that we ever talk about here on this channel? But um uh the guru, the Swami, his comment in that interview was that, well, they didn't see anything because the part of the moon they went to was its dead spot on the resonance scale. He said
Hmm.
that they weren't of he didn't mean blemishing their character, but they weren't of the focus and tuned in to see what's really there in fullness. So what they saw was essentially what they brought. Empty, desert, natural desolation,
Hmm.
um, so, that got my mind thinking, "Wow, yeah, okay, they went to the moon, but the moon they went to, a different
Was a
vibration."
construct of their own creation,
Yeah,
basically.
or just the where they were at on the spectrum of resonance
Right.
was a dead spot, right? And when I say what they brought with them, meaning, they were coming with, exploration and scientific and technical, intent, right? There of course, there's the spirit of exploration in there, but was it had maybe the Swami's point was, had it been a more spiritual pursuit, would they have reach that level? That's usually the
Interesting.
implication when we talk about these kinds of things. I don't think spiritual is the right word for it. I think um, focus. Um, anyway, it
Well,
just it's
possibly
interesting.
even in intent, right?
Intent, yeah.
Their intent wasn't to see anything out of the norm. Their intent was like you said, the scientific exploration endeavor.
But here's another little thing that just as you were saying that we should consider. There's gaps that they can't remember, right? There's been an implication that things have been blocked in their psyche.
Sure. Kind
And
of
so
a
maybe
MK Ultra of sorts.
yeah. Now get this, this may be kind of wild, maybe not for other it's child's play. Okay, they went to the moon, they saw more than we're told they saw, and
Mm,
I've suspected that for a long time, but what they saw included maybe glimpses into these other dimensions. Or maybe there was a point where they saw into that other dimension. Maybe those big ships on the rim were vimanas, so to speak, and they were seeing into, I think it's called Chanda or Kanda or whatever, the city on the moon. Probably Chanda. Uh, Maybe that's what they were seeing. Were the Vedic beings watching them from the other dimension. And now
hmm,
here's the part that I thought, okay, maybe if this makes it too complicated, what if the images we see are of the desolate, empty moon? Okay. Because the camera is a dead object and just,
right.
so therefore the camera's not going to attune to other dimensions. So it's going to be at the deadest point on that spectrum. And there we see the astronauts. But what if while they were up there, what they were seeing was not a dead world? What
Hmm.
if they were seeing at on the other dimension?
Through the
But
veil. That's
we're
interesting.
literally shown pictures of the moon, not realizing that what's there on the full spectrum may be a living world.
Hmm.
The Swami brings up this point in the Thompson book uh, by saying, think about it, the god of agriculture a god of agriculture, is associated with the moon.
Hmm.
Now we interpret that as, well, the seasons, right? We
Right.
plant and then harvest. But the point the Swami was making was, well, there's more to it than that. You know, uh, it must be on another dimension, is the point he was making. This lush vegetation, and it's interesting. He goes into it in this book here. But yeah,
I wonder if you could extrapolate that thought process to other planets. Mercury, Venus, Mars. We see them as
yeah.
these dead rocks, but are they?
Exactly. They're showing us the dead zone because it's machines, and that's what they want us to see. But actually, and I know I'm sounding like a nut, but hey, that's the fun. But actually, on another dimension is where all the life is, where the life, and especially you mentioned Venus. I'm going to be digging more into Venus because it's such a it has become kind of overlooked for Mars and other things. Um, but I just saw recently NASA releasing the clearest photo yet that they've released of from the surface of Venus, and it kind of intrigued me again with Venusian things.
Sure.
But yeah, yeah, I think that's the idea. Is yes, you can, So maybe right now Venus and Mars are teeming with life, only with our non-resonant or low resonant um, uh, uh, consciousness, we don't see it. All we see are rocks and sand and maybe some relics.
And a lot of that could be polluted from all of our technology and all the crap that we put in our systems and whatnot. It's dumbed down that ability
Yeah,
because we're told in the ancient past, we as humans were more psychic in a sense, and we had more
yeah,
expression to see through the veil in a sense. Where now it's like you really have to cling hard to get away from all the technology and all the stuff in our systems to
yeah.
even have a glimmer of anything remotely close to that.
Exactly, exactly. And then if you do achieve it, God forbid you tell anyone, or be very careful who you tell about it, because as quickly as possible you'll be labeled a nut.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
We've got to destroy the credibility of those who see through the crap. Kind of like going on in the U.S. right now, but I don't want to digress. It's a very common thing. It's the there's a certain thing that works for a certain number of people, um, and things as we perceive them here have to remain the way it is,
Right.
because there could be a rival company, say, or a rival guy who, if he can see more than what's there, might come up with something that messes up this first group's thing. So,
Hmm.
it's the basic idea that you got to keep people all believing in the same illusion, for your little thing to work. And I think there's something like that going on. Imagine, and it has been, and I don't know, maybe not exactly like this, but you know, you got a group of elites, and they possess technology to go back and forth between these dimensions that we're not even aware they have. So it could even be something like that. Here we drudge away on this existence, and meanwhile, a few people in the know, they know for a fact, and with their little dial box, they can get there. I don't
Well,
know.
this drives a lot into science fiction in a sense.
Yeah.
You were talking about Dean Koontz's book Lightning, which
Mhm.
talks about this Bell device where they're traveling through time
Yeah.
to try. You've read the book, I imagine, but they're
Oh,
trying to.
yeah.
This one guy, the scientist, is trying to save this woman throughout the course of her life, and keeps
Yes.
coming back into her life,
Mhm.
literally since the day she was born and whatnot, because the opposing people are trying to get rid of her in a sense. And
Mhm.
so they fire up this device, and he'll show up to try and save her from another incident that's happening. And it's like, okay, well, that's interesting because where do these stories come from? Where, like the Lokas in general, where has this knowledge persisted and permeated into the lexicon of for instance, like these ascended monks or swamis or tolkus themselves?
Mhm.
Because they're all in agreement that they've had experience and realize that these are realities to them. But it's like,
Mhm.
where does that idea initiate from? Where does it come from? It has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think that, it came from the people who brought it with them from these other dimensions.
Right. I think that's where I was going with that.
Well, another interesting thing, this has to do with the moon also and these other dimensions, and I've even heard Joseph Farrell talking about this, um, is that the idea that when you die, your soul,
Yes.
Joshua Cutchin talks about this, your soul goes to this this place that actually physically is between the earth and the moon. And
It's like a recollection of soul, and then when you're
yeah,
born, you pull from that
yeah.
repository and you live again. Right.
So
Interesting.
yeah, so that means that there's this other world closer to us than the moon that we're not even aware of unless, as Joshua Cutchin points to in his book, oh my gosh, the Souls book. I'm terrible. Ecology of Souls. Thank you.
That's a
Thank
great
you.
title.
Yeah, in Josh Cutchin's Ecology of Souls, um, he talks about how UFO encounters have often involved dead relatives, loved ones of the witness. And this is one of those things that, you know, ufology researchers really only have their own history to blame
Sure.
because for decades they were found, some of them, a lot of them, key ones, to be leaving out data that did not fit the ET hypothesis answer. They didn't want
Okay.
to, and so if it smacked of paranormal, no, 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 we won't report that part. We'll suppress that. And this idea of the dead loved ones appearing with UFOs is one of the things they suppressed, I guess, frequently. Anyway, Josh talks about it in his book. And so, you're thinking, well, what are the UFOs? If they're some type of energy vimana, a plasma, maybe they're a plasma vessel that brings people from this world of the souls in between the earth and the moon.
Kind of makes you question, speaking of the moon and going to the moon, what exactly the Van Allen radiation belts are, right?
Exactly. Why, and the navigating
Is
around
that
them.
going through the veil? I mean, if you're being pumped with gobs of radiation, what are you going to see physically or feel physically different than being protected by the electromagnetic radiation or sphere while we're here on the earth in our own Schumann resonance? This has always been a huge question of going out into space or going out into deep space. Well, we can't take our Schumann resonance with us, so will we survive?
Oh.
But
Or
then,
can we?
or can we survive? Or can we take it with us? Right, and
Can we take it with us? Yeah.
this is the interesting aspect of technology. And people are like, but we've already been out into space. We've been to the moon. I'm like, but
Mhm.
technically, the moon is still within the electromagnetic sphere of the Earth.
So
So,
have we been to outer space? Unless
so have
we've
we actually been outside of that protective barrier, or as other researchers have put it, maybe it's a quarantine of sorts, and we're not allowed to leave it.
that's interesting. I'm in the camp that thinks that the way I like to put it is I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that they already put boots on Mars years
Oh,
ago.
sure.
I think we at least tried it. So that would be at least interplanetary space. But if if there was a technology, you know, going back to, like you say, you can't take what was it you said we can't take with us?
Our Schumann resonance, you know.
Our Schumann, but what if you could? Because I wonder now, and I'm gonna start looking at the Apollo technology a little closer, but I wonder now if there's anything on there that could induce what what I would call the heavy side effect, meaning the gravito-electromagnetic sphere, protective sphere,
Merkaba,
energy field
Merkaba
around a
technology.
craft,
Right.
and, yeah, I don't know, maybe you could take your Schumann resonance, since you're
With you.
protected in this, I don't know,
I'm
but
trying to remember who was talking about it. I don't know if it was you or Farrell or somebody recently was talking about how in the, late 60s we already had plans to go to
Mhm.
Mars.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting because I have a book or a National Geographic from, God, I want to say the late 80s, mid 80s, somewhere around there. The
Mhm,
cover of it is Mount Everest. So
mhm.
it was a tribute to Everest in a sense. But in the middle of it is this mission to Mars. And they
Interesting.
had everything planned out, how they would get there, how they would slingshot around basically the moon or something to get there, and then how they'd have to slow down the craft and plant
Mhm.
those, one of them while one is still in orbit on the surface, and then God, I should try and dig that up. I have no idea where it is. Actually, I do know where it is. I just don't know. Yeah, interesting. But that was the 80s, and it was super fascinating that they had planned all that out back then, and then nothing comes out of it.
Yeah,
That
we're as
that
so
we
we're
know of,
told.
that we're told
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I think I've long, the idea that the suggestion that we did not go to the moon, okay, we've heard that enough. There we went to the moon, but I'm totally open to as I said before, I've long suspected, oh, of course they saw more stuff than they're telling us about, and what exactly did they see? But now this kind of takes it into that cosmic level, where okay, was there some interdimensionality going on there? I like what you suggest, just asking what are the Van Allen belts? Could it be this plasma um phenomena that Joseph Farrell, you know, talks about in his Demon in the Acre and
Hmm.
in other books. Like you say, could it be the veil that you have to get through? And what do you actually see? Because think about it, you brought up a good point. What is it, like 90% of the astronauts have never been out of low Earth orbit, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
And then you're stuck.
so
You're stuck in a tin can for 5 days.
yeah,
What
so
what's
they're
going
not
on?
seeing,
What's going
yeah,
on through your mind? And if you go through that veil, does it
uh-huh,
open up other parts of your mind that then, when you come back through it, are closed, and this is why you don't remember any of it?
yes, kind of like I called it I was calling it a veil of amnesia, that when your soul returns to material existence, now we know from where, that other dimensional world between the moon and the planet. When your soul returns to Earth, that part of the experience is you just you can't remember everything. You just can't remember the previous life. Maybe little glimpses as your life, uh, goes forward, the one you're presently living. But veil of amnesia, and I kind of shocked. There was a couple of young Mormon lads some years back that thought they were going to recruit me, and I said, "I'll listen to your spiel because I'm intellectually interested in these kinds of I don't believe Mormonism for 5 minutes." But 5 seconds, but I was interested in hearing about their thing, and they said something early on. They had a little book. There was two of them. They had a book that they would turn the pages. And one of their elders, who was closer to my age than older, at the time, he's sitting there, I guess observing their pitch to make sure they're doing it right.
Hmm.
And they said something that led me to say, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm someone who has accepted the concept of reincarnation. And I think there was some point that they had made. I said, I think what this suggests to me is, I've long thought that we don't remember our past lives for a reason. And that's because in the process of our soul returning to our material, they're sitting there listening to me, kind of quietly. And the soul returning is you pass through what I call a veil of amnesia. Well, as soon as I said veil of amnesia, their eyes got big, their jaws dropped, and they looked at the elder, and he squirmed in his chair. And I'm like, okay, what did I say? What? And they said, well, we usually don't get to this on the first meeting, but they turned several pages in their book, and there was a diagram of basically what I just described. And get this, they call it the veil of forgetfulness.
Oh, how fascinating.
And
Okay.
I had Scout's honor, I had come to this independently, this veil of amnesia. So, I
Well, that's
realize, oh, I wigged them out because, how does a heathen like me know the
maybe
inner.
maybe things leak out of the veil. I mean, this is like the Akashic records. How do you have the 100th monkey syndrome? I mean, things like this where
Yeah,
people simultaneously around the earth are coming up with the exact same ideas, and it's like, where is
yeah,
this coming from? What
yeah,
what about dream states? I mean, the things that we create in our dreams, where does some of this information come from? Because we've never experienced it in our own physical life, but
right.
here we're having this very unique experience in the dream state, which is kind of a veil in its own.
Yeah,
And what we take from the dream state, oftentimes, we can manifest into a reality of sorts.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Have you ever done a session in a samadhi tank?
Oh yes, many. So
It's
I've
wild.
traveled all around the world, but I hate traveling. There's something physical that just
Really?
anno-
Okay.
I've been I was describing this the other day actually to a friend, and I've been on so many flights. It's unbelievable, but I'm so uncomfortable flying. I don't mind being in point A and point B. I just don't like the getting there.
The getting there, yeah.
And we have a place here in Portland called the Everett House, and they used to have float tanks, Samadhi float tanks there.
Okay.
And the chiropractor that runs the facilities, because it's a massage chiropractic spa. I mean, it's a holistic center basically.
Yeah.
He's like, Hans, before you travel, you should do a Samadhi float. Really? He's like, yeah, you should try it out. And so my first float was probably the most interesting because
Mm.
about 45 minutes into the 90-minute session, I do one of these. And then the first thing going through my mind is, God, how long have I not been breathing for? Because you go into
Wow.
samadhi, right? You go into a
Yeah.
full state of samadhi. And the only other experience that I've had like that actually was in the Great Pyramid.
Oh,
When you're
okay.
in the king's chamber,
Right.
everybody's toning in the king's chamber, and the king's chamber tones to F.
Right.
But the box tones to A sharp, which is a reverse fifth, okay,
Mhm.
from F. So when you get in the box, you start toning and you hit that peak resonance in the box, and you know it because you can basically feel it. But everybody in the room is toning at F. And so it almost feels like you're being enveloped in an energy field and having an out of body samadhi experience.
Right. Okay.
In the king's chamber, it's the only place, well, even in the subterranean, which I'll get to that in a second. The king's chamber, you don't feel like Cairo is outside of the pyramid. You feel like you are in a box floating in the nothingness of the universe.
Yes.
It is the
Yes.
most bizarre feeling.
Yeah, it's startling.
Literally.
My first time you're laying there, of course you're horizontal, but this, about what however many minutes into it, suddenly feels like your body's being flipped up vertically.
Right.
And you're just in endless black, endless space void.
Right.
And it's startling. You kind of go, and I remember reaching for the inside walls of the thing and then realized, oh, I'm laying on my back.
Right.
This is weird. Yeah,
So when you do private tours, I mean, obviously they
uh,
let you chant in there, but when you go in as a public tour, they don't let you do any of that stuff. But on a private tour, you get 2.5 hours in the Great Pyramid. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
once everybody's in the king's chamber, then they unlock, the queen's chamber and the subterranean, and everybody, starts making their way down to the queen's chamber. So
Uh-huh.
I've tried to be the first person in the box, or at least one of the first few people in the box, because I want to have that out of body experience. And then the
Mhm.
second that they announce that they've opened up the other rooms, I'll belt all the way down to the subterranean.
Yeah.
I'm only person down there. I'll crawl to the end of the dead end shaft, which is about 65 feet, and you're ripping your kneecaps to shreds because it's all bedrock, and it's just
Wow.
it's so uncomfortable, and you're in such a small space. And you get down there, and I'll get into lotus position, I'll turn out my torch, and I'll meditate in complete darkness. And the noise down there is so incredibly loud, but you're not hearing anything. There's
Whoa.
no sound down there. It's like dead space. What you're hearing is your own vibration. And
Oh, wow.
it's so loud, especially after having this out of body experience. So you have this out of body experience, and then you go ground yourself. And the two experiences were so prolific, but they reminded me of being in a samadhi tank. I mean,
Yeah.
very similar experience.
Yeah, I need to find a place out here, and, have you done this before, Malia, the Samadhi tank? Yeah, I wanna introduce her to it, because it's a profound experience.
It
I
is.
wanna do it a lot more myself,
And then you
the
listen to Joe Rogan's experiences, and he's
well, my f for the generation before, mine, 2001: A Space Odyssey was their mind blowing film. For me, it was Altered States. I
oh,
was,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, it was the summer of '80. I was in between junior and senior years in high school, going in to be a senior, and, I saw it that summer, and it was just, that just really I still say that Eddie Jessup is William Hurt's best character he ever did. I don't
Hmm.
care about all the other Eddie Jessup, the scientist he plays in Altered States is, brilliant and a brilliant character. But uh so I had always been intrigued with doing, the tank thing. Never got the opportunity until like over 20 years later. And, I finally tried it, and I wanna do it a lot more. I wanna do it more often and just kind of experiment. But John Lilly, he was the guy who originated this research that the movie Altered States was inspired by. Um, he writes that what he started experiencing, um, was he'd go in, and there was one particular day where he says, I got wired up, I get in there, I lay back, close the hatch, laying there, and, I'm in there for, like 4 or 5 minutes just getting started, and they're opening the door. And so I ask him, "Okay, what happened? What's going on?" And they're like, "Nothing, Dr. Lilly, your time's up."
Your 90 minutes are
And
up.
he's like
I just got
he's
in
like,
here.
"Oh, no, not 90." They
Oh,
said, "You've been in there for 3 hours."
holy wow.
And to him, it was like only
5
5
minutes.
minutes. So
Yeah.
that was his first experience with time phenomena associated with, being inside the tank. And then he later said that, he started this research, not using anything. And Timothy Leary, who was also they were both working for the CIA at the time they were in their early days of
You
developing.
don't say.
Yeah, that and LSD. And Timothy Leary convinced him, use LSD in these experiments with the tank. And I remember a quote where he said that nothing he experienced on LSD was any more powerful than what he experienced with just the human mind without a hallucinogenic. Because the idea
Interesting.
is, if people don't get it, sensory deprivation, you cannot see, you cannot hear, smell, touch anything.
Feel,
Yeah, you can't feel, and so when the human mind, the psyche doesn't have any external input, it turns to itself.
right. Oh, right, exactly.
Yeah, and it's so, I'm wondering, you also said something, what you said about your experience inside the pyramid with what it is the beating or, what is it, the throb of your pulse and
It was
heartbeat.
it was it was so it's hard to describe. It was so incredibly loud down there,
Yeah.
but I know I wasn't hearing anything externally. I was just hearing my body buzzing, just this full coursing of energy going through my body.
I wonder if the manner in which an adept or someone trying this, the manner in which they prepare and focus and meditate takes them to that point where they can hear exactly what you were hearing, coming emanating from your own person. And on that level that they get to, they're able to
Mm,
manipulate that pulse
interesting.
to the resonance to reach those other dimensions.
Well, Alexander just talked about that in the last video with the spheres.
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna have a show on that soon.
We just talked about
Yeah, on the one that you just released, right?
with Alexander.
Yeah,
They can't
Malia
hear
was
me.
reminding me that what?
They can't hear.
Oh, Malia's reminding me that, sorry for the gap. I thought they could hear her. Malia's reminding me that the most recent, episode we released at the channel with, Alexander Miel
Well,
Milovanov.
I watched that, by the way. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about this a similar concept in that. So I recommend if you haven't seen that
Well,
episode,
get,
folks,
getting
go
getting
check it
back
out.
to the
Yeah.
getting back to the float tank and why I
Yes.
started
Yes.
doing these was so I could feel better when I've traveled.
Yes.
So when I get on the plane now, I take myself into that memory of being in the float tank, being in sensory deprivation.
Okay.
And so therefore I'm not as uncomfortable flying. Because
Ah, it's
I've
a
been on some of the hairiest flights you could possibly imagine. I mean, as of you flying in Afghanistan and whatnot, just the turbulence, you're white knuckling it the whole way.
oh, yeah,
And
going over the
and
Hindu Kush is that way, yeah.
well, we were I was coming back from Karachi, and it was just our basketball team and the girls' field hockey team. We were the only people on the plane. It was a Lufthansa flight, and we were being pushed literally into Kathmandu by the monsoon, the winds,
Wow.
and the seats were all breaking and flapping. I mean, we were just like, oh my God, we're not going to make it. Everybody's holding hands, we're all white knuckling it. The plane hit the runway further down than it was supposed to because it was so windy. The wing scraped and we were bouncing. And then the pilot comes on. He's like, I'm going to have to make an emergency exit off the runway. And we're all like, what do you mean? You go over the end of the runway, you're going to become the 19th hole on the, on the golf course down there.
Yeah.
And so he skidded onto the domestic runway, which is a little bit longer of an extension. And we came to a complete stop. And it's just, oh my God, we survived.
Oh, oh, oh.
But that was literally one of the hairiest flights I've ever been on, other than flying over the Pacific, because you're flying, 10 to 14 hours over
Yeah,
water. And
yeah.
some of the turbulence on those flights, man, you're dropping 2, 3 minutes, it seems like, before the plane catches itself. And you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly,
which is
not what I
why
wanna
I've
be
never been
doing.
a comfortable flyer. I mean, this is
Okay.
I've been on so many of these flights where it's just like, okay, well, we survived that one. Everybody's clapping when you land because
Well, I had, those flights of the Hindu Kush bumpy and then the combat landing in Iraq, but other than that, my air travel was, sitting there in the comfy seat and the lady walking up, "More Bordeaux, sir," to go with that filet mignon, 'cause, business class, first class, I did one flight over the Pacific um, oh my gosh, from Minnesota to Kyoto.
oh wow,
I
that's
didn't do, like, Seattle and it was weird. The flight left from Minnesota, we went all the way to Kyoto and then
interesting.
to the Philippines, but, yeah, you're right, flying over the ocean, that's a dimension that, you know can be hairy and scary. So
Well, so this is interesting because this kind of gets back to our conversation about, lokas and veils and different
yeah.
dimensions. Depending on which direction you're flying, you experience jet lag in a sense.
Hmm.
So if you're flying with the turn of the Earth, you don't really feel it. But when you're coming back, so if you're flying from Asia back to, say, LA or whatnot, LA or San
Hmm.
Francisco or something, you feel jet lag like nobody's business because your body and your soul are still trying to catch up with each other.
We were
Oh,
just
we were just talking about the terrible jet lag, like when I would come from Southwest Asia all the way back home to California. You're right. The jet lag
It's
both ways
horrible.
is nightmarish.
And you feel like your body is doing this all the time, but you're not.
Yeah.
You're sitting perfectly still. And
yeah,
so it's almost as if, like I was saying, your soul is trying to catch back up with your body
That's
exactly.
it,
because
right? That's
you're
interesting.
flying against the grain, right? And so,
Like
Okay.
there's this
right, that kind of gets into what we were talking about with the moon and these different layers of veils in a sense.
I figured it out.
Malia says that she thinks there's a certain speed that the soul
Can travel.
can travel, and any other speeds are just kind of
And when you have
difficult.
to land and
Oh,
let our
that's interesting.
atmosphere catch with us, and sometimes it can take up to 3 days.
Oh,
Depending on
easily.
where
Oh,
you
yeah.
are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Somewhere there's video footage of me at a Blazers versus Bulls, like one of the final rounds. Was it
Yeah.
2015 or something like that when the Blazers actually made it to the playoffs? And my cousin had second row seats behind the opposing bench because his father would always give these out to business colleagues, these kind of rewards, whatever. It's like having box seats, but they're right down on the floor. And so my cousin and I went to go see
Now.
Bulls versus Blazers. And here I am in the chair. And I'm sure there's
You're
an
the only
overhead.
one.
This guy's asleep during the whole game, pretty much, because I was so jet lagged. It was so
Oh,
horrible.
yeah. I would try to go
I
to
could
movies with
not
my
get out of it.
son, and I would be 10 minutes into the movie, I'm out for the whole thing because staying awake is,
Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. I can't sleep on planes. And so you're up on some of these flights for 30 hours, because you're
yeah,
stuck in transit. And for me, I would be flying from Kathmandu to Bangkok or Kathmandu to Hong Kong. So that's 6, 7 hours right there. Then you're stuck in Hong Kong or Bangkok for 9 hours. So you get
yeah,
your next flight, which is another 14 hours. And then you get to San Francisco and I'm gonna miss my flight in 3.5 hours because I'm so damn tired.
yeah. It's insane. It's,
By the time you get home, you've put in, quite a lot of mileage and quite a lot of time. And so I think time is a huge element to some of these dimensions as well, because the denser the dimension, or the denser the loka, in a sense, if you're going further down into the subterranean versions of them, I'm sure the density gets incredibly massive, like crushing, soul crushing in a sense,
yeah.
which is why, where if you're going in the other direction, you're being uplifted, and each dimension takes you into a lighter, both physically light and bright as in light, form of yourself, your astral form, in a sense. And so,
Well, what you just said, there's the nugget of where this whole fable of heaven and hell come from.
hmm,
You just simply go to the lower levels and things are heavier and more of a struggle. And, but what does that sound like? Oh, you go to hell, it's dark, it's awful, it's all these torments. Oh, you go to heaven, you're lifted up and floating around like a little winged angel cherub. And, but what you're actually doing is you're attuning to the destination.
hmm.
It's like maybe an inner, an inner navigation system. I'm gonna be I'm working on a piece of science fiction in which I kinda go in that direction with something, but that's why it's kind of on my mind, but, uh, yeah, so maybe that's where this idea of, heaven and hell, come from actually, and, the controller said, "Oh, there's a good thing to control people. We'll call it heaven and hell," but that's another discussion.
Well, let me read what these locos are, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's 14 of them. There's
Mm.
7 higher lokas called Urdhva lokas, and then there's the
Mhm.
7 lower lokas, which is Adaho lokas. And 7 upper ones are reserved for beings of higher spiritual consciousness, from great sages to the god Brahma, pretty much. So the highest of them is Satya Loka or Brahma Loka, the highest realm, the abode of the god Brahma, and liberated souls who are no longer subject to rebirth, right? So they've already ascended.
Yeah.
Ascended masters. Then there's Tapa Loka, a world of austerity and penance inhabited by ascetic beings. Then you have Jana Loka, the abode of sons of Brahma and other pious sages. You have the Mahar Loka, which is interesting because this is, if you read into the Mahabharata and you read into the Purana Vedas, when our
Mm.
sun explodes, in a sense, it has a massive outburst. Our ancestors built these great arcs to leave Earth and inhabit another realm. And so they talk about Mahar. Well, Mahar Loka is the 4th realm from the sun, which would be Mars in a sense, and you'd be far enough away from the solar flares that you could survive there. And then they spent several millennia there. They come back to Earth thinking the Earth needs to be repopulated, but the Earthlings, the human culture that was already here, had survived. And this is what, provokes the great 18-day war, the Mahabharata, the war for the land.
Mhm.
Is the gods returning to repopulate the Earth, only to realize that the Earth doesn't need repopulation in a sense. So that's Maharloka, the realm of the great rishis, sages, and ascetics.
Mhm.
Then you have, I don't know how do you pronounce this, Savarja Loka, the heavenly ruled, it's basically a heaven ruled by the god Indra, where righteous souls go after death to enjoy the fruits of their good karma. You have Bhuvar Loka, the space between Earth and the sun, inhabited by semi-divine beings. And then you have Bu Loka, the earthly realm where humans live, which is where we are. We're in Bu.
Mhm.
But then you have the 7 lokas beneath that. And these are worlds inhabited by beings with lower consciousness, that density I was talking about, and are sometimes considered underworlds or netherworlds. So the first one down is Atala, which is ruled by Bala. Balaram, remember him out of Indiana Jones and
Yeah.
Temple of Doom? Bala. Okay, so he's the son of the demon architect Maya. So then you have Vitala, which is ruled by the god Harabhava, where there is great quality of gold. So it's interesting that gold would be part of the underworlds and demon dimensions. Yet
Mhm.
we have a very severe fascination with it on the earthly realm itself. Then you have Sutala, which is ruled by pious demons and King Bali. You have Tatala, which is ruled by Maya. So Maya obviously is not the ultimate underdemon, the ultimate boss at the end of the game. Then you have Mahatala, which is the abode of serpents, which is interesting because in Tibetan philosophy as well, in the Mount Meru experience, each of the levels or each dimension of Mount Meru is protected by the Nagas, which are these half serpent, half human deities. And they all vibrate at a different vibration, and they will not let you through the doors of that realm in a sense, unless you are an initiate of that vibration.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Matala, or yeah, the abode of the serpents. Then you have Rastala, which is the home of demons or asuras. And lastly, you have Patala, which is interesting, not Potala, but Patala,
Mhm.
which is the lowest, most cavernous realm, the abode of the serpent king, Vasuki, and the Nagas. And so here we have, again, this Mount Meru experience where deep in Agartha or deep in Shambhala, in a sense, are these Nagas that are guarding these realms. But in this Hindu Vedic aspect, they're the lowest of the realms. They're the demons at the bottom of the pit. And I find that incredibly fascinating.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So these are the lokas for those who are interested in it. But it's a fascinating subject. And when you look at Tibetan tankas, often or mandalas, you will see different aspects of these dimensions portrayed within the mandalas, almost as if they're roadmaps of sorts.
Hmm. Road maps.
Ley lines.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think that for the longest time, for a while now, I've thought um, that. Well, let me go where I first saw the idea pointed out. Um, there's a I don't know if you know Andy Colvin. He wrote some books about Mothman stuff,
Oh,
and
interesting.
I'm in a couple of those that he did. And he's the one that sees Garuda in Mothman. Okay. And then I'm thinking, well, Indrid Cold. Okay. Indrid, hello.
Indra.
There's more Vedic theme there. And when I looked again at the Woody Dernberger case, which, by the way, when that was happening, I was living there right there in Mineral Wells where it was happening, but I
Oh,
was a
wow.
small child. We moved there in January of 64 because my dad was from Parkersburg. And, we left in very late 67. But anyway, Indrid Cold, and when I dug back into the case, he takes, one of the later visits with Mr. Cold is, Woody being taken to Mr. Cold's world, which he called, of course, Lanalos, and
Hmm.
put within the planetary context, but what Woody describes in that first time, there's been a lot of stuff added to the Dernberger thing, but you gotta go with what he said originally. Um, to me, it was essentially described as a lush jungle area,
Hmm.
and I've long suspected, okay, he either took him to South America or to India and told him it was another world, but now I gotta wonder, what if he took him to the other dimensional world, the one of the Lokas, you
Hmm.
know, and that's where Lanalos is. I don't know. I agree with Andy Colvin that there's something Vedic going on with the whole Mothman Indrid Cold thing. Personally,
Interesting.
I think that. So which means by extension, there's something Vedic going on with all UFO stuff, or a lot of it.
Well, what was the Ananurbi looking for while they were marching through all these realms?
Yeah.
Vimana
So,
tech, who knows? Very interesting.
yep, yep. Very,
Then you
very
start
interesting
looking into the
stuff.
rumors of Hanabu and whether or not any of that stuff is true or not. But
Hanabu, Hanabu. Here, I've got mine right here. Hello.
Oh,
Oops.
Frankenstein.
oh wow,
Yeah, they got the
interesting.
Frankenstein close-up. Yeah, there's the Hanabu right there, folks. The
But these look a
Rebel.
lot like Vimanas in a
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah. There's the imaginary interior because, as we know, the Hanabu, as such, itself never existed.
Yep.
It's
Yeah, you can buy models at every model shop.
Yeah, the models are great. I mean, I love the design. It's really cool. But of course, what this is what what oh my gosh, George Adamski,
Oh, right. Okay.
it's kind of cribbed from his account, and it's pretty much been demonstrated that the Adamski flying saucer was a shroud for a 1950 something Coleman camp lantern,
Oh,
and that's been proven
how interesting.
and demonstrated. It's kind of funny, kind of interesting,
It's so
but
dusty.
the I know it's dusty. You don't have to tell everybody that. Um, uh, um,
It's on a
yeah.
top shelf.
Anyway, I forgot my point. Uh,
Do you guys want to
Adamski.
pause a minute so we
Adamski.
can get
No,
information?
I'm good. I'm good. Um, uh, yeah, the Adamski UFO was, you know, just a camp lantern shroud. But oh yeah, the Hanabu lore was a post World War II neo-Nazi bit of fluff that was put out there. A guy named Ernst Zundel was involved with the origin of this story, and the much vaunted photographs, alleged photographs of the thing, flying. Those actually did not emerge until the 1990s, late 80s, maybe, well
Interesting.
into the era of being able to manipulate photographs effectively. So, you can't point to that either. But you mentioned Lightning by Dean Koontz earlier. And I just want to remind everybody, or if you're new here to the channel, any particular viewers, that if you go to the videos and you look at the different playlists, I do a video about the bell.
Yes.
Okay. And in that video, I talk about the Dean Koontz book and how it might have played into this whole lore about the bell. And anyway, I'll let people go find that.
It's a fascinating story for those of you who want to read it. It's a really good
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. Now, as Malia pointed out, I painted this all brass. You can't see this because it's black and white because of some stuff I'd read about Vimanas. And yeah, so if the Germans were building a saucer or whatever,
Wonder Weapon.
yeah, one of these wonder weapons like this, they would have got it from ancient Hindu knowledge,
Right.
somehow very earthly, obtained, not from a crashed ET saucer.
And I think, in honesty, that's what they were trying to discover, whether or not these things were real in the ancient histories, because in a sense they're just rumor mill at some point, and then it's like, oh well, we've never been to India, let's go to India and Tibet and actually look for the entrances to the underworld,
Yeah,
this lost Vedic technology described in this amazing story or of poetry, the Mahabharata, and just these epic tales. Because again, where is this knowledge and information coming from? It's got to come from somewhere. And it's the way
exactly.
they describe these stories. It's like we've chatted before, there's even mentions of automatons in the Mahabharata. This
Oh yeah.
character, yeah, um
There's all sorts of stuff in
there's a,
there.
what is his name?
Yeah.
It's slipping my mind all of a sudden. Uh,
They have their version of a Hephaestus,
anyway,
the guy in Greek mythology who's
yes,
down in the underworld who he makes Achilles' shield in the Iliad, but Hephaestus is the great worker of, amazing constructs, and in the Mahabharata there's a character that it's like, oh, maybe that's where the Greeks got Hephaestus from,
good
this guy who
possibility.
fashions all these amazing
Weapons
machines.
for the gods, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, is what he
Yeah,
does
the,
in
the
that.
character I'm thinking of, his name is Babarak, and so he has this
Yes.
famous fight with Krishna, and Krishna lobs his head off, and
Yeah.
his little Indian mustache sitting there on the ground laughing at Krishna, going, "You can't kill me that way. I'm not of you. I'm not
Right.
physically alive. I'm an automaton.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to think smarter than that, Krishna." And so this is where the use of these Brahmastra weapons, and just really, it's the stuff in that story is so fascinating. And it's like, where does this come from? How, without a knowledge of these technologies, how are you writing about them as if you had the knowledge of them? And so
Oh,
this comes back to the veil of consciousness, in a sense, that you're talking
mhm,
about, the veil of amnesia. Well, maybe all of this has existed, but
mhm.
because we're now stuck in this lower vibration and this lower density, we can't remember any of it, and some of
Yeah.
it slips through.
Ignorant.
Ignorance too,
So,
yeah, and ignorance plays into that because, people there's things they don't wanna know, so it's easier just to go through life, with the blinders on, keep it simple, you know, make it to your grave relatively safe. And, that
Believing in lies.
that's that or that, yeah. Yeah, and the ease to wanna believe in the story that's given you. It's like,
sure.
"No, it's not that, it's this," because if it's that, that's too uncomfortable, for some people. But I do think that these lokas, these other dimensions, are where a portion of truly unidentified flying objects, true UFOs, come from. I
Reside,
think they come
sure.
from these, yeah, where they reside. This is, and that the flying saucers, like the Hanabu type,
Can be
um,
nuts and bolts, but they can also be energetic or
yeah, and they're what they go into the sky and they just float there and then turn the knob and that takes them to the different, you know, levels of resonance in the alternate dimension, and
it's a
then they just
fascinating
kind of
concept.
float down. So they have the machinery. Hey, since I showed you the Hanabu, I gotta show you the Lost in Space
Michael
one.
Cremo talks a lot about different energy Vimanas and different
Lost in
different
Space. See,
aspects.
this one's dusty too. Somewhere in
Oh
there is
wow.
the little dial I'm talking about where they can tune into, other dimensions. But anyway, I
Hmm.
gotta dust these
It
things
is
up.
definitely product.
Oh, it's got just the little things. This is from the Invaders, of course. So, any chance I get to show off my model kits, there we go. Okay, well, you know what? We've been going on over an hour. I think they probably would have rather have heard more from you than from me. But uh,
Well, we both have
oh,
our equal share on this.
so what are you working on now?
That's a really good question. I'm still obviously still diving into my research around Dropa. I mean, there's not so much more I can find out about it, but there's a lot
Mhm.
more from the Buddhist cultural mysticism side that I can bring into it. And so I've been starting to tinker around with that, going back through the Lotus Sutra, seeing what I can glean out of the pages of that, because there's some fascinating stuff there. And just researching in general these different astral realms or astral projection of these ascended masters, basically, and what were they seeing, where were they going in their astral
Mhm.
projections. And so I've
Right.
been incredibly fascinated with finding out a little bit more about this. I'm still diving deep into the stories of the Magoi and the Yaren and the Yeti of South Asia, because there's an overlap, I think, of some degree into Buddhist mysticism as well with these creatures. And so I want to discover more about where that overlap is. What tales are coming out of Bhutan versus coming out of Nepal, Tibet, and central China, because in China and in Bhutan they have these sanctuaries for the Yaren and the Magoi, which I find fascinating. It's like, why
Mhm.
would this creature doesn't exist? Why do you have a sanctuary, wildlife sanctuary for them? So I think that's incredibly fascinating. But then what is their connection to the inner earth? And some of these stories kind of flow over into Bigfoot. Bigfoot's always talked about being seen with extraterrestrials and UFO craft and whatnot as well. And so maybe there is a dimensional being of sorts that we only see as one element in the physical here, or if we even get
Mhm.
a chance to see it, but in its own dimension, it's completely different.
Yeah.
And
A thought occurred to me, but go ahead.
I don't know worries. I'm speaking again next year at Alien Event and Biomed Expo in March, I believe it is, in LA. There might be some other events that I'm going to be speaking at. I'm just trying to figure out how to take the time off from my incredibly busy schedule to actually
Yeah.
dive into that. But yeah, I mean, the sky is open right now. I'm fascinated with a lot of topics. Some of the stuff that we've been talking about has kind of made my brain start ticking. I want to get more into researching dreams and memories coming from or in dreams, because I tend to have incredibly prolific dreams, and those are usually the ones that I remember.
Yeah.
And some of them have actually come to pass at one level or another, not 100% or 100-fold, but the things that happen in my dream happen very similarly in reality, just a short
Yeah.
time after I dream about them. And so I'm fascinated where this information is coming from, because as we had talked before, there's orthological timelines, right, that
Mhm.
overlap, bend, fold, twist space around them. And maybe
Mhm.
in the dream state, we are having the ability to access future or past events
Yeah. I
at
like
one
that.
level or another. And so this is super fascinating. I've always wanted to dive into dream analysis and dream
Excellent.
state. So these are kind of the pet projects I'm working on. Otherwise, I'm doing a lot of graphic design. That's my business. So I thoroughly enjoy the clients that I work with, and yeah, looking forward to some of the adventures that we're gonna have next year.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna
With
make
the
this,
Harmonicon
working on
and
making
the
this event
Lost
happen.
Horizons
In France.
In France,
in
yay.
France. Yeah, so this should be super
So
exciting, and I look forward to it.
yeah, yeah, we're looking very much forward to it, and, you know, got the work ahead of us to make it happen, but, it's a labor of love, so it's gonna be, easy to do. But, anyway, where can everyone, find you again?
So my website of my travels and adventures is megalithicmysteries.com, or mega megamyst megamist.com. On there you can find my 3 books, Dropa Legends and Lore, Kemet, The Land Before the Greeks. It's the Mysteries of Kemet, and then my Magic of Symbols books. I published them through Lulu. I just recently got my ISBN numbers for them, so they'll be available on Amazon and Lulu. And basically, with the ISBN, it will allow me to do a lot more with these books, and so
Yeah, yeah.
that's kind of the key. And then you and I had discussed a little bit about possibly putting together um, the books on your publishing. So
Yeah, yes,
we'll,
that's
we'll,
right.
we'll have to dive into that a little deeper. Otherwise, yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to, where I'm at. Yeah, look for my work online, and looking forward
Great.
to whatever I end up speaking at next year. So that's it's
Yeah,
kind of in the air
I'll
this
have
year. But
to when you make it to LA, we'll have to make one of those, so, anyway, thank you again, Hans Dietrich,
yeah, thanks for
and,
having me. This has been a
this is
very
always
interesting
interesting
subject.
to talk with you, and, we'll do this particular subject again, so thanks again, everyone, we'll see you next
Thank you.
time.
Yep.